Hey everyone, Simon here with Top Tennis Training, and in this video I want to show you 3 ways to instantly improve your tennis. Now each one of these tips can be done in a matter of minutes, and you'll instantly see a difference in the quality of your hitting and also how you feel on the tennis court. So the first tip is to really track the ball properly at all times when you're either in a rally or in a point. Now, how often do we hear coaches or players telling themselves to watch the ball properly? But what does it actually mean? Now, most players would say that when you watch the ball, it should be that you're watching the ball bounce and rise up to your strings and try to see the ball hitting the strings, which is one part of that tracking of the ball, but it's not the entire part. Now, if I watch the ball up to the point of contact and then I see the ball coming off my strings and I relax and I stop tracking that ball, when my opponent hits the shot, if my eyes are not focused on that contact point and on the ball traveling towards me, and I pick up the ball as it's passing the net or even bouncing on my side of the court, and then suddenly I switch back on again, I'm now reacting late to that ball. I won't be in the right position, and also it makes tracking the ball much harder because I'm switching on and off between watching the ball and then relaxing, watching the ball, then relaxing. Now what we want to do is be really tracking that ball at all times in that rally situation. So as your opponent makes contact, you're zoned in on that ball. Of course you're going to see the player, of course you're going to see their racket hitting that shot, but your focus, your point of focus is that ball, and as soon as it comes off the strings, if you're really zoned in on tracking that ball, you'll quickly pick up if the ball's coming to your forehand side, if it's coming to your backhand side, if it's coming deep, or if it's coming short.
Deep. Short.
So you'll be able to react much quicker and you'll be on the ball much faster if you're really tracking that ball well. Now actually seeing that contact point is almost impossible because of the speed of the contact point, unless you're hitting the ball really soft, in which case you'll be able to see that contact point. But if you're hitting the ball with any speed, that point of contact will just be a blur. But what you can do really well is see the ball bounce, see the ball rise up, see the ball come onto your strings, so your eyes are still tracking the ball right until that blur of the contact point, and then you'll see the ball come off your strings. So you might not see the actual contact point because it happens so quick, but you'll see the ball rising up to your strings and then coming off the strings. Of course, in between tracking the ball, I'll still see where the opponent's standing, I'll still see what kind of shot they're hitting, are they going for more spin, but all of this is a byproduct of me watching that ball. It's impossible for me to track the ball onto my opponent's strings and not see where they're standing on the court. Now before we get into tip number 2, I just want to mention that if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please make sure you do so now. So click that subscribe button, and also make sure you turn on the notification bell. So even if you are currently subscribed to us, make sure you turn on that notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when we release a new lesson. So tip number 2, let's see if you can spot the difference between these 2 strokes. So stroke number 1, stroke 2, stroke 1 again, stroke 2. So in stroke 1, I'm doing what most players do, and that's holding their breath when they're swinging the racket. So they'll get into that back position, they squeeze up, they hold the breath in, they're tense during that contact point, they're tense all the way through the finish, and then after they make contact, when the ball has already left their strings and it won't help them, they actually start to then exhale at the end of the swing. And this is often where you hear the grunters do their grunt, so that they're hitting the shot, and then they grunt. Now this will help you to actually get the rhythm of that breathing, so inhale and exhale. So it's better than holding your breath completely, but it's not the ideal way to actually play tennis. Now if we look at someone like Federer, who is, I would say, the god of tracking the ball and also how he actually breathes on the court, you'll never see a picture of Federer like this with his face puffed up because he's holding his breath. Now if we look at other players like Nadal, Djokovic, a lot of them you'll see images where their faces are puffed up at the point of contact because they're holding their breath. Now what happens when you hold the breath? So if I'm in that position and I hold my breath now, and I swing as fast as I can. At the point of contact and during that strike zone, I'm tense because my body is holding in that breath. Now if I exhale prior to that contact point, at the point of contact, I'm actually relaxed, I'm loose, and this is exactly what we want to do when we're on the tennis court. So by me getting into that back position, having that inhale, and then starting the exhale prior to the actual contact point, I'm relaxing through that contact point. I'm also allowing my body to swing in that relaxed way. My muscles are relaxed, everything is relaxed in my body if I exhale during that contact point. Now, one of the main reasons players are tight is because of holding their breath. They'll get into the power position and they hold their breath, everything's stiff, but as soon as I start that exhale, I feel completely relaxed, I feel loose during that strike zone, and this doesn't matter which stroke it is for. If I'm a one-handed backhand player, I can exhale. If I'm a two-hander, if I'm hitting a slice backhand, you want to feel like you're exhaling through the point of contact, and this will really help you see a massive difference in your game with just that quick adjustment of when you start your exhale. So ideally you want to be starting it just as the ball has bounced and is rising up towards your racket. Of course you'll have to adapt depending on sometimes more spin, less spin, more power, less power, etc. But in general, as the ball has bounced and is rising up to your contact point, you're now starting that exhale. Another way to actually feel this really easily is to inhale on the preparation and exhale on the forward phase of the swing. So if it's my backhand, it would be inhale, so inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And this will help you to really feel that inhale and that exhale. So next time you play, focus the first 5 or 10 minutes on tracking the ball. Once you feel like you're really tracking that ball well, then turn your attention to actually breathing through that strike zone. So inhale, exhale. And the more you practice this, the better you'll get at it, and you'll start to feel that relaxation through that strike zone. If you can apply just tip 1 and tip 2, you'll already see a massive difference when you're playing the game. And tip number 3 is to increase your margins when you're playing. Now this means in a rally situation, in a point situation, instead of going low over the net, instead of hitting the ball extremely flat, and instead of hitting the lines or trying to hit the lines, which you might hit a few great winners that way, but you also make a lot of unforced errors and you won't be able to construct points in that manner. So the opposite of that is now lifting the ball over the net, hitting with good amounts of topspin and aiming for big targets. Now when you think about the tennis court, the first obstacle that we have to clear is of course the net. But how often do you actually hit the ball into the net? How often do you go for a more powerful shot and end up hitting the net? This is simply because you're not lifting that ball. You want to almost take the net out of play, and the easiest way to do this is simply lift that ball, give yourself more of an arc. So that would be the first step in creating more margin. So taking the net out of play by lifting the ball over the net. Now in order for us to lift the ball, we can lift it by opening the strings, but that will be more of a defensive shot. This is more of a dink shot. Or we can increase it by going from low to high, and this will also increase your topspin levels. So by swinging from low to high on both your backhand and your forehand ground strokes, this will help you to clear the net, but also produce that topspin to then get the ball to dip before the lines. Because obstacle 1 is of course the net, but then obstacle 2 is getting it to dip before the lines. And this is possible with that topspin. Now if we think about the ball as a clock, so we have 12 o'clock on the top, 6 o'clock on the bottom. When we want to produce more topspin and when we want to really clear that net with a high loop, the easiest way and the simplest way for you to do this instantly is to make sure that your racket head is dropping completely below that ball level. So if my contact point is here, my racket should be here. If my contact point is here, my racket should be here. And from that position, I'm now focusing, instead of going forward with my racket, I'm focusing more on going upwards with my racket head. So I'm hitting the ball from that 6 o'clock position to 12 o'clock. So it's going from below the ball to above the ball. So that brushing effect will help me to produce that topspin and also that lift, which is so vital in taking that net out of play. Now in terms of your targets, where should you be aiming to increase your percentage? Now in general, you want to be hitting cross court. By hitting cross court, I'm going over the lowest part of the net. By hitting cross court, I'm also going into the most amount of space. So I have the most amount of court to hit into. And if I hit the ball slightly late, the ball still goes into the middle of the court, so it's not out. Now if I go down the line, I'm hitting over the higher part of the net. If I mistime it and hit the ball slightly late, the ball's going to go into the tram lines, so the ball is out of play. It's also important to remember where you have to recover before your next shot. Now when I go cross court, my recovery zone is much less than when I go down the line. So that's another vital reason to hit the ball cross court in general. So to build your points with those cross court exchanges. So a quick recap, tip number 1 is to track the ball at all times when you're in a rally or you're in a point. This means tracking the ball from the time your opponent hits the shot to the time it passes the net, bounces on your side, rises up to your contact point, and then the blur off the contact point, then the ball coming off your strings and back to your opponent. Tip number 2 is to exhale through that contact point. So inhaling in the preparation phase and exhaling through that point of contact. And tip number 3 is increasing your margins. So this means taking the net out of play and taking the lines out of play. Making sure you hit with a good margin over the net, making sure you hit with good levels of topspin so the ball bounces inside the court, and making sure that you go for the larger targets, so those cross courts in general. Now if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. If there's any lessons you'd like to see in the near future, please leave a comment down below this one, and we'll try to do as many of them as we can. Signing off, Simon from TTT, all the best, and see you soon guys, take care.